Let's talk about walls in Ponytown. Walls in Ponytown are a very confusing subject for a lot of people because there's so much that goes into walls. It's not as simple as just placing an object on your island. There's a whole extra mechanic involved and everything, and it can get very confusing very quickly. Today I'm going to be explaining all of this to you, how you can place your own walls, how walls work, and literally just everything involving walls. If you are on mobile, I highly recommend you just skip straight to this timestamp here because I'm going to be splitting this into two little sections here. First, PC, which will have a little bit of mobile tips on it, but mostly I'm going to be explaining how to move walls and place walls and stuff like that on mobile in this section of the video at that timestamp. So go ahead and skip to that if that's what you play on primarily, but let's go ahead and get started now. So, to place walls, you have to first get a saw tool. I don't know why it's a saw, but you have to equip a saw before you can do anything with walls. To equip a saw, all you have to do is press T on your keyboard once, and it will give you a saw. Ooh, look at that. I have this little thing now where wherever my mouse is, there's like a wall. That's cool. That's interesting. You can also, of course, use the action in the bottom of your screen. The action is just a little saw thing. It's either down here at the bottom of your screen somewhere, or it is over here on the right side of your screen somewhere. If you don't have it in either of those places, just press the Edit Actions gear cog thing down here at the bottom of your screen, and then you can find it in the Buildings tab in the Actions. Find the next wall or the previous wall, either of these will work. Grab them and drag them down to, whoops, I grabbed the wrong one. Grab them and drag it down into your little thing there. All you have to do is click and hold, or if you're on mobile, just tap and hold and drag it down there into the bottom of your screen. You will also need one of these change wall modes to mess around with walls a little bit more. I'll explain that shortly, but go ahead and grab that and drag that down there as well. Another way that you can get the saw is quite simply by pressing tab on your keyboard or pressing the hammer icon down here in the bottom left to open up your building menu. So there is, of course, the hammer where you can place objects, the shovel where you can place floor tiles, and then the saw where you can then place all of these things. This will automatically equip the saw when you switch between those tabs and stuff like that. And of course, you can switch the wall types that you want to, including these fences and things like that. And the fences you can actually change the season of, but if you want to change the season of a fence, the only way to do that is to quite literally toggle it by pressing that little icon there. You can also press space on your keyboard and it will change between the summer, winter, and auto seasons for that. I've already explained seasons in a different video, so I'm not going to get into that here, but that is how you can do that, and that is why some people have like winter fences and stuff like that. So now that we've explained how you can get these different walls, let's explain how to actually place them, because that is probably what you came here for, right? Well, it is very simple. All you have to do is click on somewhere where you want to place it and then start dragging. As you drag, you see this little preview of where it will go, and of course you can make that up this way and twist it around, go wherever you want to or whatever, and you can go as far as you want as long as it's still visible on the screen. And of course you have something like this. Now let's say I absolutely hate this wall, I messed up, I don't want this wall, I can't get to the other side now, what have I done? I need to remove that wall. How can I remove that wall? Well, it's very simple. All I have to do is click and then drag, and it will start glowing red as a preview instead of the other way, and as long as I go over this, I can erase it and delete it. Now, erasing is something that a lot of people get very confused on because it is very confusing, and I don't know why it has to be so confusing, but it just is, I guess. So, there's three different types of walls, and you can actually see them up here above me. Do you see this right here? This is a short wall. This also appears to be a short wall, but it's not actually a short wall. I'll explain that in a second. And then, of course, there's a tall wall right here. This is actually three different versions. Of course, like I said, you have the short wall like that. Then you have the auto wall, which is like that. It looks exactly the same. And then, of course, you have the tall wall, which looks tall. This is where a lot of the confusion comes from in terms of how do I erase it and things like that. You have to have the exact same type of wall. It doesn't have to just be the same plain wall, like I placed a plain wall here. I have to have a plain wall equipped, but it also has to be a tall wall because this is a tall wall that I'm trying to erase. So I have to make sure that that's a tall wall. As you can see, I'm trying to erase this and I have the tall wall equipped, so it's going to erase it. By the way, you can cancel an erase or replace by hitting escape on your keyboard. So if I was to switch this to an auto wall and try to drag over this, it's not letting me erase it because now it's an auto wall. If I switch to a short wall, it's not going to let me erase this tall wall because, again, it's not a tall wall. So not only does it have to be a plain wall, it has to match the exact same type of wall that you're erasing. But you can still drag and replace that tall wall with whatever wall type that I just used, and of course, it will turn into that. There's another weird oddity that happens here. For example, as you can see earlier, this was a short wall, and then there was an auto wall, and then there was a tall wall. This is another weird oddity that happens that also confuses a lot of people. If I drag this and I start with a wall that matches, I don't have to match the rest as long as it's within a straight line. This is where a lot of the confusion comes from, or at least a lot more of the confusion comes from. And so as you can see, I can just erase that whole thing, even though there was an auto wall there, a short wall there, and a tall wall there. So that's how you erase them, that's how you place them, and you still probably don't understand the difference. So let's go ahead and explain that difference now. I'm going to get rid of this tall wall so that it doesn't get really confusing here. But let's go ahead and get rid of this tall wall here, and this is where this action down here comes into play. If I click that, you can change the tall wall mode. Basically, it changes the walls that are auto to become tall temporarily. Now, this only happens for you. Other players on your island will not see this wall here that I'm hiding behind as a tall wall, because this is something that I did, and this is an auto wall. They can toggle this themselves and stuff like that. Auto walls are toggleable. Of course, you can press the action like I did if you're on mobile. That's kind of the only way to really do it, other than to go to your build menu, go to the gear icon on that, and then toggle this tall walls thing here. Now, of course, if you're on PC, you can just simply press F8 on your keyboard and you'll be good to go. You can swap these around. Now, just because this is a tall wall temporarily doesn't mean I can replace this with a tall wall, because this is still considered an auto wall. Even though it appears tall, it's technically an auto wall, and I just have tall walls enabled. Honestly, I kind of hope that they mess around with this mechanic and make this a lot more clear, because this is another thing that makes it very confusing and very strange. I'm trying to explain this as simply as I can, and it's very, very difficult because it's just so complicated. But that's pretty much everything you need to know about placing walls. Let's go ahead and jump into the house, because there is one more thing that I should explain, because the house walls are also different. All the walls inside your house are set to auto by default. So I have my tall walls enabled. If I click this, they will all go short, and so on and so on. So every single wall in your house is set to auto by default. Now, I can replace these. I can make them anything I want. I can make them short, tall, whatever. It doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want to them. I can even change this back thing, but I cannot remove this back thing. So I can make this a plain wall or whatever like that, but I can't just immediately erase it. It looks like I'm about to erase it, but watch what happens when I try to erase it. It just says that I cannot do it. It says this wall section cannot be removed because it's your house. You don't want to remove your entire back wall, right? Same thing happens to these sides as well. You can replace the sides, but it's not very visible. But you can replace the sides, but you can't erase the sides. It will tell you the same message, this wall section cannot be removed. It does that to all the sides. You also cannot replace the walls at the bottom. I mean, you can replace them with whatever you want, right? Like you can place them with a plain wall if you want to, but you can't erase the bottom of your walls either. This wall section cannot be removed. So that is pretty much it for how to place walls and how walls work. I hope I explained this as cohesive as possible. So let's now move into the mobile section of this video. A lot of these same things are going to be repeated, so I do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you're going to be skipping the rest of this, if you did, I would sure as heck appreciate it if you liked, subscribed, shared, and did all those wonderful things like that. But like I said, let's move into the mobile version of how all of this works, because it is slightly different. So here we are on the mobile section of the video. If you want to place walls or do anything wall related, you do indeed have to get a saw tool. There is multiple ways to get a saw tool here on mobile as well as on PC. All you have to do is find a saw action. It doesn't look like we have one by default, so if we don't have one on the right side of our screen or on the bottom of our screen, all we have to do is click this gear icon here at the bottom of the right of the screen, go over to actions. This little house icon is how we can find it. Then there is a next wall icon. We just click that, or tap that, I mean, and then drag it, and we can drop it into our little thing here. We're also going to need the change wall mode for me to explain more things. Let's go ahead and grab that and drag that into place as well. So you can see that I have those two actions there now. I can do whatever I want with them, and it's fun. Then, of course, I can scroll down slightly and close out of this menu. Now, there's another way that you can get a saw tool as well. You don't have to just click this action right here, or whatever like that. You can also press this hammer icon down here in the bottom left, and then click this saw here, and it should give you a saw in your mouth once you do that. And, of course, the build menu is another way for you to very easily switch between all the different walls and wall types and stuff like that you want to place. And that's pretty much how you can get a saw, but the question now remains, how do I place that there wall? Well, it actually starts to get very complicated here because there's 3 different types of walls. If I open up my build menu again, you can see how there's these little symbols on these walls. For example, there's this wood wall here. There's this little symbol. If I click it, there is a tall wall thing. There's a tall one, a short one, and an auto one. There is actually a difference between these three. I'll explain that in a moment. So let's go ahead and start by placing some walls here. To place on mobile, all you have to do is click the screen once, and you should see something that looks a bit like this. It's like a little ghost, ooh, with these little pegs, I guess. I don't know what you would want to call them, that are stretching out of the sides. You can just click that, or tap that, I mean, and hold it and drag it around and everything like that, and then you can kind of rotate it and stuff like that, do whatever you want with it, and then once you're done placing it and you have it where you want to place it, all you have to do is tap the screen once and it will place it and you'll be good to go. If you are about to do this or whatever and you change your mind, you're supposed to just be able to hold it and it's supposed to cancel it. It doesn't always work because it's very finicky, but that is how you're supposed to cancel it. But if you placed it by mistake, like I just did there, technically, all you have to do is click the thing like that, and you can see how it's glowing red, and then, of course, you can drag it however much you want, and then click the screen again, and it will remove it. I keep saying click. Please forgive me for that. I am so used to PC, and that is my own fault. If I want to remove this tall wall and I have a short wall equipped like this, I cannot do that same thing. I can instead just replace the tall wall with a short wall. That's because there is actually 3 different types of walls: auto, short, and tall. And not only do you have to have the same wood type of wall, for example, I have like this wood here, then there's of course the plain and stone. Not only do I have to have the wood equipped because I'm trying to remove a wood wall, but I have to have the tall one equipped because this is a tall wall that I'm trying to erase. You have to have the exact same wall type and the exact same height of the wall used to delete the wall. It's a very confusing thing, and honestly, I very much hate it, but it just is the way it is, I guess, and there's not much we can do about it. So if I want to remove this and I place a short wall instead, it might look like, oh, that doesn't work at all. Denny's stupid. Well, it's, again, just like I said, because I tried to, place a tall wall where a short wall is, or vice versa. And of course, there's also an auto wall. The auto wall is also another thing that's very, very, very confusing because, as you see, if I place it, it looks exactly the same as this short wall next to it. I honestly hate this. I really hate this, but it just is the way it is, I guess. There's not much we can do about it. But the auto wall actually has a very interesting, nice little feature that we can mess around with, and that is this little action down here that I added a minute ago, that little tall wall feature. If I click that, it will make that auto wall become a tall wall, and vice versa. So I can toggle that on and off as much as I want to. If it's an auto wall, I can toggle it from short to tall to short to tall. It's over and over and over and over again. However, this is only client side, which means only you will see this as a tall wall when you enable it, unless other people also enable tall walls. Again, I really hate this. It's very useful for certain like mini games and like little tricks and stuff like that, but it honestly really sucks because it makes it very, very confusing. But another way that you can toggle this, of course, is to go to the gear icon on the of the build menu, and then of course there's this little tall walls thing there, and you can toggle that on and off. But like I said before, this isn't technically a true tall wall because, like I said, if I try to get a saw and I get this wood wall here, and I make sure it's a tall wall and everything, and I try to replace it over this, it's not going to work. It's not going to erase it because it's not actually a tall wall. It's still considered an auto wall even though it appears to be tall. This is another part where a lot of confusion comes in. Something else that gets really weird and confusing again is on how to remove walls. For example, we already know that this first half is auto wall and the other half is a short wall, but if I take this auto wall and drag over it, I can also erase the short walls. Even though I have an auto wall equipped, I can still erase this short wall as long as I started on an auto wall. So as you can see, if I click that, it will erase it. Now, if I undo that and try to do the exact opposite and start here and drag this way, it's not going to actually erase it because you also have to start with the same type of wall. Again, another really confusing mechanic that I'm glad is there, but I also kind of wish it wasn't because it makes things very confusing. But that pretty much does it. That is pretty much everything you need to know about walls. I'm going to go ahead and explain a few things about the house walls because if you go into your party house, walls do act a little bit differently. So all the walls in your house are actually set to auto walls by default. As you can see, if I toggle this on and off, you can see how all of these are auto because I'm able to actually toggle them. Of course, you can replace any of the walls that are inside your house and stuff like that. I can even remove them if I want to. But if I want to, say, get a plain wall or something like that and change this background, I can, of course, do that. But I can't make that background a short wall. And if I want to remove this wall by placing the same type of wall over it or whatever, I can't do that. It may look like I can, but as soon as I click it, it will give me a message saying that I cannot do this. The same thing happens with the left side of your walls, the bottom half of your walls or whatever, and of course the other side of your walls. Basically, the entire entire border of your house you cannot change the wall of, or remove the wall, I mean. You can, of course, change it. Like, I can change this to a plain wall as much as I want, and stuff like that. But it just is the way it is. I cannot, to my knowledge, change this bottom wall to a tall wall, so this is also just something that's always stuck as a short wall no matter what. So take of that what you will, and that pretty much does it. I don't think there's anything else really for me to explain in terms of walls. If I missed anything, please yell at me in the comments below, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and doing all of those wonderful things like that, because when you do those wonderful things like that, not only do you get access to wonderful content such as this, but you also get to become wonderful yourself, and I think we all want that. So do those wonderful things, and until next time, stay wonderful.